What is hail?
A hailstone is a ball made of layers of ice. It starts out as an ice crystal in a cloud, just as a snowflake does. But a hailstone is moved about by drafts or winds in the cloud, rising into cold air and drifting down where the air is warmer, again and again. The process builds up layers of ice and melting snow on the hailstone. While the average size of a hailstone when it finally makes its way to Earth is 1/4 of an inch across. Hailstones can become large enough to cause real damage, denting cars and damaging crops. The biggest recorded hailstones weighed well over 2 pounds. Fortunately, hailstones don't fall too often and usually only during spring and summer thunderstorms.
Why does scratching help quiet an itch?
Scientists think that scratching gives your touch sensors a stronger feeling to focus on. And the itch is ignored, at least temporarily.
What is the difference between fur and hair?
While there is some debate about this, most scientists agree that there is no real difference between fur and hair. There are many different kinds of hair. The hair on a dog is different from the hair on a polar bear, which is different from the hair on a person's head. And the hair on a person's head is different from the whiskers on a man's face. But it's all hair. Many fur-covered animals actually have two different kinds of fur, the ground hair, sometimes called secondary hair, which is the dense, soft undercoat of hair, and guard hair, also known as primary hair, which is the longer, coarser outer layer of fur. Ground hair helps the animal maintain its body temperature, while guard hair protects the ground hair from water, snow, or insects. Some animals, like certain kinds of lambs, only have ground hair. And some animals such as horses, primates, a group that includes people, and some dogs have only guard hair. Animal fur has long been used to create clothing for people. At one time, fur outerwear was necessary to protect people from harsh winter weather. In modern times, however, fur coats are a luxury item. Many of the animals whose fur is prized for its beauty and warmth, like minks and foxes, are raised on fur ranches that were set up expressly to produce fur coats to sell.
Why don't predators of poisonous snakes die from eating venom?
When animals that feed on poisonous snakes eat their prey, they also eat the venom that snake has stored up. But this venom that would kill other animals does not kill the snake's predator. Why? Because these predators have a built-in resistance to the venom of the snakes they eat. An opossum can eat a rattlesnake, venom and all, and only suffer a mild reaction. The same amount of venom that goes into the opossum's stomach would be enough to kill a horse.
How do farmers keep animals from eating their crops?
Farmers keep animals away from their crops in a number of ways. Birds are probably the biggest wildlife pests because they feed on seeds before they have a chance to grow. And they eat developing food plants. Because loud noises and the presence of predators and people frighten birds. Farmers have used things like scarecrows and models of bird predators, like hawks hung from poles or trees to try to keep hungry creatures away. Devices called bird scarers, which make repeated, loud, shotgun-like bangs, are also used. But before scarers were invented, it was usually the job of farm children to stand in fields, in all kinds of weather, using wooden clappers, rattles, and other noisemakers to keep birds away from crops. Other crop enemies in the animal world are insects. Sometimes insect damage can be controlled by introducing beneficial insects that eat the bugs causing the problem. But generally farmers take stronger measures, like spraying chemical insecticides that poison the pests. Sprayers pulled by tractors are usually used, though airplanes, crop dusters, can spray a large field very quickly.
What is the lowest place on Earth?
The lowest place on the surface of Earth is believed to be in the Mariana Trench, located deep in the western Pacific Ocean, extending southeast of the island of Guam to northwest of the Mariana Islands. It reaches down 36,198 feet, 11,034 meters, below sea level.
How do muscles work?
Your brain tells your skeletal muscles to move by sending signals through your nervous system. Nerves in your muscles receive the message and make the muscles contract, making them shorter and thicker. Contracting causes the muscles to pull the bones to which they are attached. But muscles cannot push, so usually a second muscle, following a second message from the brain, has to pull the bone back. A lot of muscles work that way in pairs.
What's so funny about that?
The funny bone got its name from the bone located above it. The humerus, sounds like humerus, bone in the upper arm.
Why do most things bought in stores have bars and numbers printed on them?
The groups of lines and numbers that you see on the packaging or labels of most items in a store are called the Universal Product Code, UPC. Widely used in the United States, the series of bars holds a coded message that allows a computer to exactly identify the name and size of each product and the company that makes it. The numbers accompanying the lines give the same information, but the bars can only be read by a machine, while the numbers can be read by store employees. When you buy an item in a store, a worker passes the item's barcode in front of a reading device. A beam of laser light scans the barcode, and its unique light and dark pattern is changed into on and off electrical signals. These signals travel to a computer, which identifies the item and sends information about it to a main store computer or to one located in the business's main office. To help keep track of the store's stock of that item, for instance, the computer is also connected to a cash register, which can print the item name and price on a receipt. UPC symbols have made it easier for retailers to keep track of merchandise and to learn what kinds of items customers want to buy. It saves purchasers time in the checkout line, helping store employees ring up items quickly and accurately.
How do the things that I eat and drink keep from going down my windpipe?
When you eat and drink, chewed food and liquids travel toward the back of your throat. Muscles there automatically close the passageway to your nose, so that your food and drink doesn't take a wrong turn. Though some people can force liquid through these muscles, making it spout from their noses. More muscles make the epiglottis, a flap at the top of your windpipe, or trachea, automatically close so that food can't get into your lungs. Your food and drink then have a clear pathway down your esophagus, a muscular tube that runs from your throat to your stomach. Sometimes, a trickle of liquid, from a drink, or from saliva in your mouth, passes into your windpipe before the epiglottis can close it. When that happens, you feel like you're choking, and you cough and cough to expel the fluid from your lungs. It is said that what you swallowed went down the wrong pipe, and that's exactly what happened. Some liquid went down your windpipe instead of your food pipe. When food gets stuck in the trachea, though, more serious choking can occur. That food can partially or fully block the windpipe, leading to breathing problems. If the windpipe is partially blocked, a person may still be able to take in enough air to cough out, which will usually remove the piece of food. Remember, as scary and violent as coughing is, it is a good sign during choking, indicating the trachea is not completely blocked. When a person cannot cough, though, and holds his or her neck, that individual needs help. The Heimlich maneuver, named after the doctor who invented it, is a method of dislodging a piece of food from a choker's throat by reaching your arms around the person's body from behind and squeezing your fists up into his or her abdomen. The practice has saved many lives.
What plant makes the largest seeds?
Cocoa palm trees produce coconuts, which are among the largest seeds in the world. Giant fan palms that grow wild in the islands of the Seychelles Republic, located in the Indian Ocean, produce what are known as double coconuts, which can weigh up to 50 pounds, 23 kilograms.
Why do I have to wipe myself after I go to the bathroom?
It is important to wipe yourself after you go to the bathroom for a couple of reasons. First, it keeps your clothes from becoming soiled. Second, it protects your skin from the irritation that can result if traces of urine and feces are left there. Feces contain a lot of bacteria that can multiply once they leave the body, especially in areas that are moist and airless, like around your bottom. A rash and sores can result when waste is left on the skin. So wiping helps you stay dry and clean.
Why do some people need to take naps?
Young kids need naps to keep them healthy and safe. Their bodies are growing and changing at a rapid rate, which requires a lot of energy. In addition, the world is filled with so many interesting things to discover and so many new skills to learn. And all that stimulation can make a child pretty tired. Whether big or little, people don't perform at their best mentally or physically when they are too tired. Often when you're tired, it takes twice as much energy to perform a task that you could easily do if you were rested. Sometimes being too tired makes you less coordinated and clumsy. And you might think less clearly, which could lead you to hurt yourself. Taking a short rest allows your body to slow down for a while so that it can regain the energy it needs to continue performing at its best.
What are learning disabilities?
Learning disabilities are disorders that keep people from understanding or using spoken or written language in typical ways. Learning disabilities are not due to physical handicaps like blindness or deafness. Rather, the disorders have to do with problems in the brain and the way it perceives things. About 6% of all children in the United States have some sort of learning disability. The most common of these are dyslexia, where the brain has trouble understanding words, sometimes reversing the order of letters and words, and attention deficit disorder, AD, which is marked by an inability to concentrate. Special teaching methods have been developed that help such children learn successfully despite their disorders. This teaching is done either in the regular classroom, in special classes, or at a specialized school, depending on the severity of the disorder. It is important to identify learning disabilities early, before affected children express their frustration in bad behavior or start thinking of themselves as stupid. Most people with learning disabilities simply need help learning things in different ways, or at a different pace, from other kids. A great number of people with learning disabilities have above average intelligence. Many go on to lead very successful lives. It is believed that inventor Thomas Edison, political leader Winston Churchill, and scientist Albert Einstein all had learning disabilities. What is meant by IQ?
Where does our clean water come from?
Rain is the source of the water we use. It collects in rivers and lakes and in human-made gathering places called reservoirs. Or it sinks into the ground, where it is pumped back to the surface by wells. Water usually has to be treated before it is safe for drinking and general use. It has to be free of harmful bacteria and chemicals, as well as substances that make it look or taste bad. Water is pumped from lakes, rivers, or reservoirs through huge pipes to water treatment plants. There it is filtered to remove large pieces of debris, like twigs and dead fish. Two special chemicals, aluminum sulfate and lime, are then added. These make the small particles of dirt left in the water cling together in tiny lumps called flocks. Pumped into a sedimentation tank, the water is allowed to settle, with its flocks gradually sinking to the bottom for removal. Ready for more filtration. The water is run through layers of stone and sand that remove fine particles of dirt. Bacteria are then added to eat any microscopic creatures that may still be present. A chemical called chlorine is added to kill the bacteria once their job is done. Other chemicals may be added to make the water softer so that it works better with soap for washing or healthier. Fluoride, for example, is often added to prevent tooth decay. Once treatment is complete, water is sent through huge tubes to storage places, tanks, or covered reservoirs where it is ready for use. It is pumped into communities through big pipes located just underground called water mains. These mains supply homes and businesses with water through smaller pipes that attach to faucets and other outlets. In order to meet the needs of communities, treatment plants can produce many millions of gallons of fresh water every day. Next time you fill a glass with water, think about the incredible journey it took to arrive there.
Why do I dream?
When you sleep, your brain does different things. Most of the time it is quiet, resting with the rest of your body and producing little of the electrical activity seen during waking hours. But every 1.5 to 2 hours, you dream. During dreams, your brain shows the same electrical activity as if you were awake, and your eyes move about very rapidly. That is why this is known as REM sleep, referring to the rapid eye movements. Oddly, during all this brain and eye activity, your body is very still, its muscles limp. Scientists think that this inability to move the body is protective, keeping people from hurting themselves as they respond to what happens in their dreams. In scientific experiments, cats were operated on so that their muscles were able to move when they dreamed. Some began to run and even attack imaginary mice while they slept. If you sleep for about 8 hours, you have 4 or 5 dreams during that time. Dreams usually last anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. So in one night you can spend between half an hour and more than 2 hours dreaming.
Why are male birds more colorful than female birds?
In some species, like the North American cardinal, the male bird has brilliantly colored feathers while the female's feathers are drab and dark. One reason the males have a more colorful appearance is so they can capture the attention of the female bird they wish to mate with. The male's bright colors also come in handy after mating. When he's protecting the nest and sending a clear signal to other males to keep away from his territory. The female's dull colors, on the other hand, help her blend in with the branches surrounding her nest and avoid being seen by enemies. If her feathers were bright like the male's, she would be easily spotted by predators. And she would have to leave her nest unprotected if attacked.
What happens to garbage that is recycled?
Many communities have trash recycling programs to try to reduce the amount of garbage that must go to landfills. Certain types of trash things made of materials like metal, glass, plastic, paper, and cardboard can usually be processed and reused. Once cleaned and sorted, metal cans, for instance, can be melted down and poured into molds that make new cans or parts for things like cars and kitchen appliances. Glass jars and bottles are cleaned, too, and sorted into colors clear, green, brown, and more. They are then smashed into tiny pieces that can be used to make bricks and paving materials. Or they are melted down and poured into molds to form new jars and bottles. Plastics cause the biggest garbage problem. All sorts of containers and other products are made from plastic, but only some types can be recycled. Plastic doesn't rot or decompose like many other kinds of trash, which means that when it goes into a landfill, it is there to stay for a very long time. When many plastics are burned, they produce dangerous chemical vapors that pollute the air. The kinds of plastics that can be recycled are cleaned, melted, and poured into molds to make new plastic objects, like pipes, insulation, and office equipment. Because so many trees are cut down every year to make paper for books, magazines, newspapers, and other products, it is important to recycle paper items so new paper can be made from them. During the recycling process, waste paper is chopped into very fine pieces. Mixed with water, boiled, and made into a thick soup called pulp. This pulp may be washed and bleached to make it white or left a natural color. Pulp is then spread out onto large screens that allow water to drip through. Next, giant rollers squeeze the pulp, removing more water. Once the new paper is dry, it is wound onto huge spools and later cut into sheets of paper. Other paper products like cardboard boxes are made in similar ways. Wood fibers and other plant materials are also used in paper making.
How do insects make other sounds?
Most of the time, insects make noise for mating purposes. Male insects produce sound to attract females, sometimes over long distances. A male insect can make such sounds by rubbing parts of his body together. The grasshopper, for instance, rubs the rough edge of his hind leg against the edge of a forewing. Similarly, the cricket scrapes his forewings together. Other insects have membranes that vibrate, which also produces sound.
Why do I have to go to school?
So much of what you need to know to live successfully as an adult does not come naturally. It has to be learned and studied and memorized. Children learn to speak naturally, for example, by listening to those around them, but reading and writing must be specifically taught. The complicated process of learning the alphabet and the sounds it represents. Putting letter sounds together to make words. And learning the meaning of words in order to read and write are skills that only come with special effort. Knowing how to figure out problems that involve numbers. And learning how the world is run or how nature works are important things to learn, too. Your parents might be able to teach you these things, but they would need many hours each day to do it. Most parents need to work outside the home and wouldn't have the time to give proper instruction. Though some kids are homeschooled by their parents instead of going to school. In the United States, a public school system provides years of free education for all children. Teachers who are specially trained to know what children should learn. And how, and when are the people who do the job. In past centuries, when most people worked on farms or in simple factory jobs, formal schooling, that done in a classroom, was not as important. But today, jobs frequently require complicated skills and complex knowledge. To ensure that all children learn the kinds of things that will help them do well as adults, state governments now require that all children to go to school for a certain number of years, usually to the age of 16. So that's another reason you have to go to school. It's the law. Kids who skip school a lot find themselves in court. Children who go to private schools or whose parents have received special permission to teach them at home are exceptions.
Which country has the fewest people?
Once again, Vatican City wins a smallest award. In addition to being the smallest in area, Vatican City also, not surprisingly, has the smallest population, about 850 people. The country with the second smallest population is Tuvalu, formerly called Ellis Islands. Home to fewer than 10,000 people, Tuvalu consists of a string of 9 coral atolls, which are like donut-shaped islands, rings of coral with lagoons in the center. Located in a region in the South Pacific called Polynesia.
Why do some wounds have to be stitched up?
Usually wounds that are deep or that have edges that don't naturally stay together need to be stitched up by a doctor. Blood carries dirt and germs out of most wounds, but deep wounds don't bleed much. For that reason, it is very important that deep wounds be cleaned well and closed up, preventing an infection from developing in deep body tissues, where it can cause real problems. Wounds with jagged edges that gap are also stitched up, to keep germs out and to prevent extra scarring. Wounds on the face are often given special attention, too, because scars there are so noticeable and can affect a person's appearance.
What happens when a person loses his or her voice?
When your vocal cords and the tissue that surrounds them are irritated or swollen, you usually have a condition called laryngitis. Laryngitis makes your voice sound funny and hoarse and, in some cases, can even keep you from speaking altogether. Then it is said that you have lost your voice. Usually the swelling in your larynx or voice box is caused by a cold or infection there. But sometimes smoking, or yelling, singing, and talking a lot can cause the problem. After a few days of resting the vocal cords and not speaking, or after the illness that has caused the swelling goes away, your voice will return to normal.
What can be done to minimize pollution?
Wherever there are a lot of people, and wherever there are industries, there will be pollution. It cannot be eliminated, but it can be reduced. And many laws have been passed in the United States and elsewhere to help accomplish that. These laws help establish pollution standards, requiring industries to release fewer pollutants into the air and water. But several obstacles remain. Some industries have successfully lobbied lawmakers to be less strict about pollution controls. Many industries are reluctant to cooperate with the laws that have been passed, stating that the required changes are too expensive, and federal agencies lack the funding to enforce the existing laws. So many companies ignore the tighter standards about how much polluting they can do. In spite of these obstacles, there is much that can be done to clean up our air, water, and land. Some car companies have begun building cars that burn fuel more cleanly or that operate on a more environmentally friendly mix of gas and electricity. Producers of gasoline can make adjustments to the fuel so that fewer harmful emissions are released when it is burned. Sewage treatment plants, if they install the right equipment, can remove nearly all the waste before dumping what's left in bodies of water. Factories can treat their waste to neutralize or remove much of the harmful chemicals before dumping. Alternative energy sources harnessing the power of water or the sun, for instance, can be used to supplement the gas and oil that is used now. Landfills can be constructed so that underground pipes carry away the dangerous methane gas, using it to provide power. They can also be covered with dirt, grass, and trees to create a playground or a park. Farmers can use fewer chemicals, relying instead on organic farming methods, free of man-made chemicals. Individuals and families can also play a part in reducing pollution. Taking part in community recycling efforts and using biodegradable items to create compost, which can then be used in the garden, helps reduce each family's weekly amount of garbage. Families can also make an effort to use less water and electricity. And choosing to buy organic food supports the farmers who have decided to avoid harmful chemicals.
What causes growing pains?
Growing pains usually refers to the aches and pains that children feel in their legs at night when they are lying in bed. Kids seem to get them during growth spurts, times when they are growing a lot. Doctors think that the tendons, the tough elastic straps, or bands that attach muscles to bones of affected children do not grow quite as fast as their bones do. The tendons eventually catch up, but in the meantime this condition puts muscles under extra stress during an active day and causes them to ache and even spasm. Contract abnormally, when they are finally at rest at night. Growing pains are not dangerous. They don't bother children during the day, and they usually come and go at nighttime. Regular stretching exercises keeping the muscles and tendons relaxed often solve the problem for good. But if the pains are very bad and continue for a long time, a doctor should be seen. In rare cases, an infection, disease, injury, or unnoticed malformation of the legs is causing the problem.
What makes soda pop fizz?
Soda pop gets its fizz from carbon dioxide, a harmless gas that makes up part of the air we breathe. It is mixed into soda pop to make it light and fun to drink. When a soda bottle or can is sealed, the gas can't escape and stays mixed with the beverage. But when soda is opened or poured into a glass, carbon dioxide, which is much lighter than the liquid, rushes to the surface in the form of bubbles and escapes into the air after bursting. Sometimes the bubbles rise so fast, bringing soda pop with them, that they make a frothy, fizzing foam. Soda pop goes flat when it has been left in an open container for a long time and has lost all of its bubbles, or carbonation.
How do birds know when it's time to migrate?
Scientists believe that in some species, young migrating birds learn when and how to migrate from the older birds in the flock. Experts have also noted that changes in the temperature and amount of daylight seem to trigger a migrating impulse in birds. As the days get shorter and the amount of sunlight decreases in the autumn, migrating birds begin to produce hormones. These hormones cause the birds to store up more fat in their bodies. Fat that can be converted into energy to help sustain them on their long flights. As the time for migrating approaches, birds display signs of restlessness. Some people have even observed such restlessness among captive birds, which have a steady food supply and little contact with outside temperatures and sunlight.
What is the deadliest mushroom?
The most poisonous mushroom is the death-cap toadstool, Amanita phalloides. It is commonly found where beech and oak trees grow. Even a small piece of it can kill, usually within 6 to 15 hours. Unlike some poisonous plants, the poison of the death-cap toadstool is not destroyed by cooking.
What do AM and PM mean?
The abbreviation AM stands for the Latin phrase ante meridiem, which means before noon. PM stands for post meridiem, which means afternoon. Meridian, the English spelling, which used to mean midday, refers to an imaginary line that would appear if you could draw a line from the North Pole to the South Pole. The terms came into use in ancient Rome, when the movements of the sun were used to measure time. At 3 points during the day: when the sun rose, when the sun set, and when the sun was directly overhead at midday. It was easy enough for the Romans to determine the time. So they divided the period of daylight into 2 parts: the period of time before midday, AM, and the period of time after, PM.
Why do some people use wheelchairs?
A person may use a wheelchair for many different reasons. Many people in wheelchairs suffer from partial or complete paralysis, which is the loss of control over the movement of some part of the body. Paralysis can result from injury to the nervous system, including the brain or spinal cord, or damage to the muscles that control movement. It can also be caused by certain diseases that affect the nervous system, including multiple sclerosis. Some people use a wheelchair not because they are paralyzed but because an injury or disease like arthritis or scoliosis has made walking extremely painful or difficult. Many older people, suffering from a stroke, a broken hip, or perhaps simply the weakness and frailty that sometimes accompany old age, must use a wheelchair to get around. There are many different kinds of wheelchairs. From the manual types that are propelled by moving railings attached to the wheels, to electric wheelchairs that are operated by hand controls that resemble the joysticks used in video games. Some people prefer a motorized cart, or scooter, with either 3 or 4 wheels. These carts are generally smaller and easier to maneuver than typical wheelchairs. While wheelchairs have the potential to give disabled people much more freedom of movement, that freedom would be useless without things like ramps at building entrances and wheelchair-accessible bathrooms. Thanks to the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, a law passed in 1990, public buildings and transportation, like buses, must have facilities to accommodate people in wheelchairs. The ADA also makes it illegal for employers to discriminate against disabled people. Young people with disabilities are protected by the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, which specifies that all children, regardless of disability, have the right to a free and accessible education.
What is a weed?
Strictly speaking, a weed is simply a plant growing where it is not wanted. Weeds usually grow easily and spread, and they often interfere with the growth of more desirable plants. Weeds don't usually have nice features, like pretty flowers or tasty leaves, to make them more appealing to people or other animals. They are frequently hard to get rid of, growing back from the smallest bit left in the ground. People's opinions vary greatly about which plants are weeds. In the United States, for instance, most people consider dandelions weeds and spend a lot of time and effort trying to get rid of them. In France, however, they are grown as a crop, with their leaves used in salads and their roots processed to make a coffee-like drink.
What is a laser?
A laser, which is short for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, is a device that produces laser light. Laser light is more powerful than ordinary light because all its rays have the same wavelength and move together. allowing them to be focused in a narrow beam with great precision. The rays that make up regular light are made of several wavelengths that spread out in all directions once they leave their source. A laser beam can be focused on so small an area that it can put 200 holes on the head of a pin. Laser light beams vary in strength, depending on the materials and amount of energy used to make them. Some made of invisible infrared rays can create so much heat that they can cut through metal. Because laser beams can be controlled with such precision, these same infrared rays can be used instead of scalpels to perform the most delicate surgeries. Lasers that produce visible light beams are equally useful, both in scientific work and in our everyday lives. Because laser beams can measure great distances with such accuracy, for example, they have been reflected from mirrors placed on the moon to record our exact distance from it. Telephone and computer signals are sometimes changed into laser light so that they can travel with great speed through glass fiber optic cables. Low-powered light lasers read the barcodes on the labels of products we buy at stores and scan the patterns etched on compact discs to give us music.
How can cows make so much milk?
A cow, like all mammals, produces milk to feed its young. If its calf nurses regularly, the mother cow's mammary glands will produce enough milk to give the baby animal all the food it needs. Gradually a calf will nurse less as grass and other feed makes up more of its diet. A mother cow, in turn, will produce less milk until it is no longer needed. But by milking the cows regularly 2 or 3 times a day, dairy farmers can cause the cows to continue producing milk. Certain breeds of cows are particularly good at milk making, producing 18 to 27 pints, around 2 to 3 gallons, or 10 to 15 liters, each day. A cow's large, round udder, located on its underside, has 4 nipples, or teats, that are squeezed to release stored milk. While once done by hand, milking is done on modern dairy farms by machines with suction hoses, which do the job more quickly and cheaply. Tank trucks collect milk from farms daily and take it to processing plants where it is pasteurized, made germ-free, and used to make dairy products like cheese, butter, and ice cream. While 90% of the world's milk today comes from cows, that was not always the case. Goats and sheep which could graze on vegetation that grew in lands too dry for cows were long used as important sources of milk and dairy products. Their milk, and the milk of other animals like camels, buffalo, yaks, llamas, and reindeer, is still used today, though in small quantities compared to cow's milk. Every mammal makes milk that is different from that of other mammals. Milk that is especially suited to its young and to the environment in which its babies must grow. Reindeer milk, for instance, has 4 times the fat of cow milk because reindeer live in colder climates. and more calories are required for living in wintry surroundings. But all animals' milk shares many basic qualities and is full of vital nutrients.
Why do I have to wear braces?
Straight teeth that are spaced well in the mouth are easier to clean. They bite and chew better, and they last longer. They look nice, too. Few people have perfect teeth. But doctors called orthodontists can change the position of teeth to work and look better. These changes are usually done during childhood and early adolescence, when teeth and jaws are softer and still growing. Special appliances like braces, wires, bands, and more are used to slowly, over many months, push or pull teeth into their correct positions.
What is substance abuse?
Substance abuse means taking drugs, other than those prescribed by a doctor for a specific illness, in amounts that are dangerous or that prevent a person from doing everyday things, like going to school or work. The substance being abused can be alcohol, marijuana, pills called tranquilizers that make people feel very tired and relaxed, household products that are inhaled, or a number of other drugs. Drug abuse happens all over the world, to all kinds of people, young and old. It frequently causes terrible damage to the person's body, to relationships with family and friends, and to career or education. In some cases, substance abuse leads to death, because the person taking the drugs gets involved in an accident or because he or she overdoses, or takes enough of the drug to cause the body to completely shut down.
Will a plant grow better if you talk to it?
Studies have shown that plants seem to grow better if they are talked to. But plants don't have sound receptors or nervous systems. So scientists know that plants aren't responding to the specific words people say.
Why do some wounds cause scars?
Skin cells are some of the busiest cells in your body. They are constantly reproducing, creating new cells to replace those that make up the hard top layer of your skin, the epidermis, which wears off in bits and pieces throughout the day. In fact, the surface of your skin is completely renewed every 28 days. Because your skin is so efficient at repairs, cuts, and scrapes heal amazing well. But sometimes, when a wound is large and extends deep into the inner layer of skin, the dermis and into other tissues, the damaged areas are replaced by special repair cells called scar tissue. Thick and pale, this tissue doesn't have the flexibility of the skin or muscle it replaces. and it doesn't wear off or renew itself. In other words, while some scars fade a bit over time, they don't go away completely.
Why does this happen, and more important, how can you make it go away so you can keep eating?
Everything you eat passes over the roof of your mouth, also called the palate. When something very cold touches the back of the palate, it affects a nerve center there that controls how much blood flows to your head. Depending on the circumstances, the nerve impulses can constrict or narrow blood vessels, or it can dilate or widen them. Scientists have not devoted much time to studying the cause of ice cream headaches. Mostly because they pass quickly and are not serious. But doctors believe that the cold sensation on your palate may send a signal to the nerves there that your head needs warming up. Blood vessels open, allowing more blood, and more warmth, to flow through. This rapid dilation causes a buildup of fluid in your tissues that can't immediately drain. The extra fluid causes slight swelling, which results in the shooting pain you feel in the front of your head. Ice cream headaches rarely last more than a minute. But the pain can be intense enough to make you want to avoid them altogether. Try eating your ice cream or drinking your milkshake more slowly, and try not to let the cold stuff linger. On the roof of your mouth, hold the food more in the front or on the sides of your mouth before swallowing. Also, you can warm up your palate by placing your tongue there for a few seconds.
Why do we have hair?
Prehistoric human beings were covered with a coat of heavy hair that protected them from the cold and from other threats in the environment like attacking animals and rugged terrain. The fine hair that covers our bodies now is probably a remnant of our prehistoric days. Today we have less need for a thick coat of hair on our bodies, we wear clothes to keep warm. And few things in our world threaten to seriously damage our skin. Yet we still have heavy hair on certain areas of our bodies for protective purposes. Our eyelashes and eyebrows, for instance, keep dirt and sweat out of our eyes. And the hair on our heads helps to keep our brains warm in cold temperatures.
What is an amphibian?
Amphibians are cold-blooded vertebrates that spend part of their lives in bodies of water or watery places, and part on land. The name comes from the Greek word amphibios, which means living a double life. This class includes frogs and toads, salamanders, and caecilians, which look like large earthworms. Amphibians start out as eggs that are usually laid and hatched in water or moist ground. And the early stage of most amphibians' lives are spent in the water. Baby amphibians, called larvae, don't resemble the adults at all. As they mature, they go through major changes, called a metamorphosis. Adult amphibians usually live on land, never straying far from the water and returning to it when it's time to breed. Frogs and toads, for example, emerge from their eggs as tadpoles. Sometimes called polywogs, little creatures with a rounded head and a tail. They have gills for breathing in water and cannot survive on land. Over time, the gills become air-breathing lungs, the tail disappears, and limbs develop. Adult frogs and toads may spend a good amount of time in and around water. But they need air in order to breathe. Not every amphibian follows the usual pattern of spending the larval stage in water and the adult stage on land. As with every part of the animal kingdom, there are some creatures that don't fit the mold. For instance, some tree frogs living in tropical regions never leave their leafy homes. Their eggs must be kept moist, however. So the female frogs lay them in the drops of water that gather on the tree's leaves after a rain. For the most part, amphibians are fairly small creatures, with most being only a few inches long. The smallest frog in the world is no bigger than a person's thumbnail. The largest amphibian is the Chinese giant salamander, which can be around 5 feet, 1.5 meters, long. Amphibians do not have scales, plates, or fur. Their skin is usually smooth, with some toads being notable exceptions, and moist, in addition to breathing through their lungs. Amphibians breathe through their skin, and that moistness is necessary for them to do so. To make sure their skin stays moist, amphibians secrete a fluid that spreads over their skin and locks in moisture.
What should I do if someone asks for my name when I'm online?
The internet is an amazing place where you can find information on all kinds of things. You can chat with friends, email long-distance pen pals, and read what other people are saying about things you're interested in. But just as you shouldn't talk to strangers when in the outside world, you should also use caution when chatting in the cyber world. Unfortunately, there are people surfing the web who present a threat to kids. They may be adults posing as another kid or somehow lying to you about who they are and what they want. To be safe, never give anyone you don't know personal information about yourself online, including your name, address, or phone number. And never agree to meet a person you've chatted with online, even if that person seems friendly and harmless. Let your parents know if a stranger is sending you email or instant messages. It's also important to ask your parents first before registering at a website. Many sites offer special benefits if you register as a member, which involves providing your name, email address, and sometimes home address, phone number, and other information. While some sites protect your privacy and only use that information to send you things you want, others sell your information to advertisers or organizations. As a result of registering at a website, your family may end up getting lots of unwanted email, regular mail, and phone calls from companies trying to sell you things. And even if you find a great deal online for something you really want, never give out your parents' credit card information unless they say it's okay.
What is throw up?
Throw up, or vomit, is partly digested food that has come back up forcefully through your mouth. Vomiting usually happens when the stomach is irritated by certain foods or by an infection caused by germs, bacteria and viruses. The quickest way for your body to get rid of the irritants or germs in your stomach is to vomit them out. Your brain tells the muscles in your stomach walls to spasm, contract abnormally. It also tells your diaphragm, the large sheet of muscles that separates your chest from your abdomen and is most responsible for your breathing, to press downward on your stomach. These activities combine to force the contents of your stomach up and out. Other conditions can cause nausea, that bad feeling in your stomach before you throw up, and bring on vomiting, too. Smelling a terrible odor, undergoing a frightening experience, or even, for some people, riding in a moving vehicle, called motion sickness, are some of the things that can send signals to the vomit center of the brain, which tells the stomach to empty itself to feel better.
What is the biggest muscle in my body?
The largest muscle in the human body is the gluteus maximus. That's the big muscle that makes up most of your bottom. The muscle is large because it has a big job to do. It moves the thigh bone or femur, the largest bone in the body. Some of the smallest muscles in the human body are those that move the eyeball.
What is a reptile?
Reptiles are cold-blooded vertebrate animals with scales, shields, or plates covering their bodies. They include snakes, lizards, alligators, crocodiles, and turtles. There are around 6,000 living reptile species. Dinosaurs are among the many extinct types of reptiles. And while they prefer warmer climates, reptiles can be found all over the world. Most reptile babies develop in eggs with a hard outer shell that have been laid by the female. A few develop in eggs within the mother's body.
What causes escalator steps to fold flat when they get to the top and the bottom?
The secret has to do with hidden wheels connected to each step that run along rails. Each stair has 2 wheels on each side. Wheels connected to the front of each stair run along one rail, and wheels connected to the back of each stair run along another. When escalator rails run alongside each other, their stairs have a normal shape. But the rails change position in relation to each other as they approach the top and bottom of an escalator. And the stairs are gradually pulled flat.
How do waterfalls form?
Over time, a river flows across rocks and carves out a riverbed as it descends from its highland source. If some of these rocks are soft and quickly erode, or wear away, the river valley may slope steeply, causing the river to rush wildly downhill in rapids or even a waterfall.
What should I do when someone's touch makes me feel bad?
Sharing a hug or kiss with someone starts with loving feelings inside. When you don't have those feelings, hugging and kissing should not be expected. You have a right to say no to touching or being touched by someone. A person's control over his or her own body is personal and private, no matter how old he or she is, and should be respected by all. Although most grown ups are nice people who care about and respect children, there are a few who do things to harm kids. One bad thing they may do is treat children in a sexual way, which is behavior that should only take place among grown ups who have a special love relationship. It is never okay for a grown-up to treat a child like this. Under any circumstance. It is against the law. If someone ever touches your body in a way that invades your personal privacy, you should tell a trusted grown-up at once. Sometimes telling someone about it is hard to do, though, because you may have confused feelings about the situation. Maybe the touching gives you an uneasy feeling, but the attention it brings makes you feel special. Maybe you get treats or presents if you agree to touch or be touched, and you like those, too. And sometimes you might feel afraid because you know that if you tell what's going on, a lot more trouble will start. Still, touching between people should be a happy thing. If it makes you feel confused or bad, then you know it isn't right. If for some reason the adult that you go to for help doesn't believe your story, tell it to someone else. Keep on telling until the person who is touching you has been stopped. Molesting a child is an awful thing, so a lot of people will be very upset when they find out about it. Just remember that nobody is upset with you and that you are not responsible for the bad things that were done in any way. Children are taught to trust adults and to do what grown-ups tell them. Adults who abuse the trust of children in this terrible way are completely to blame.
What is a skyscraper?
A skyscraper is a building of great height that has an iron or steel frame inside that supports its floors and walls. before builders figured out how to make such frames. Stone or brick walls had to bear the weight of structures, which could not stand up if they were made too high. And tall stone or brick buildings had to have very thick walls on lower floors to bear the weight of the walls and floors above them. These thick walls wasted a lot of useful space. Because cities have limited land, builders experimented with materials and construction methods in an effort to construct taller buildings that were more practical. Finally, in 1885, William L. E. Barron-Jenney built the first modern skyscraper, in Chicago, Illinois. While just 10 stories high, which seems short by today's standards. The home insurance company building was the first structure to have an internal steel skeleton bear all of its weight. From that point on, tall buildings began to soar into the air, scraping the sky. Just 30 years after the first skyscraper was built, buildings were erected that reached 60 stories high. Today, the Sears Tower in Chicago has the most stories of any skyscraper at 110. Of course, none of these great heights would have been practical if the electric elevator had not been invented. Skyscrapers, though, presented a unique set of problems. The buildings had to have a certain amount of flexibility so that strong winds and bad weather would not damage them. The Sears Tower is always swaying, averaging about 6 inches from its true center. Too many skyscrapers built close together also blocked out light and reduced airflow to the buildings and the streets below, creating unhealthy conditions. And fires were a special concern in skyscrapers because a small blaze on lower floors could quickly be sucked up elevator shafts and stairways, creating a deadly inferno. So builders learned to use fire-resistant construction materials, as well as safety features like smoke detectors, water sprinklers, metal fire doors, and fire escapes.
Why can I sometimes feel my heart beating?
You usually only notice your heart beating when it is working faster than usual. When you are resting, your heart usually beats about 85 times per minute, slower in adults. But when you are active, your muscles need more oxygen and nutrients. It's your heart's job to increase the amount of blood that flows through your body, delivering what your muscles need by pumping faster. After a real workout, your heart can be beating twice as fast. And it may feel like it's pounding in your chest. When you become frightened or excited, a similar thing occurs. The hormone adrenaline, which prepares the body for emergency action, is released into your blood from glands, along with your brain and nervous system. Hormones, chemical messengers that circulate in the blood, help control body processes. Adrenaline tells your heart to pump faster in an instant fight or flight response that has helped people survive dangers from the beginning of time. Your heart makes sure your muscles are ready to fight or run from the thing that has frightened or excited you.